Alright. You guys got your videos ready and stuff?
Okay. Then I'm gonna keep sitting.
Alright. So, this is our shark. First we look down here at the pelvic fins and notice that we have claspers, so we know that it's a male. That's important for when we're looking at the testes to determine if it's a testes or ovary for male or female. Right, we open up the oral cavity here where the mouth is and the gills, and then we opened up the pleuroperitoneal cavity where the organs are. Okay, one of the most noticeable things when you open up the pleuroperitoneal cavity is the liver. So this is the left lobe of the liver. You have a median lobe of the liver in the middle, and you have the right lobe of the liver. On the median lobe of the liver, you'll see this like flattened green area. That's the gallbladder. In your book, it identifies a bile duct that runs through the gallbladder, but you can't even see that. Okay? Then we're going to move the liver over here so that we can see the esophagus and the stomach. We cut open the esophagus here so you can see the papillae of the esophagus. When that transitioned into these flat folds that are called rugae, then it's now the stomach, whereas esophagus has the papillae here. Okay? Next to the esophagus, on the side here, is the testes, and then the mesentery attaching, I'm just going to do the mesenteries at the same time. The mesentery attaching the testes here is called the mesorchium. If that was an ovary, it would be called a mesovarium. Okay, I'm just going to skip describing all the stuff that we're not going to look at, because I feel like maybe that was more confusing, describing imaginary organs. This is the kidney that runs down here along the backbone. This is all kidney. The top third of it here is referred to as a Leydig's gland because it also contributes to production of seminal fluid. Okay? The ductus deferens, with the sperm and seminal fluid run down, actually runs on top of the kidney, but you can't see it. Then the bottom 2/3 here is just kidney, with of course the ductus deferens running down here. And in your book it says there's a sperm sac and a seminal vesicle here, but you can't see any of that because it's too immature. Okay, so going back up here to the top, so we have the esophagus here. This top part of the stomach is called the cardiac portion of the stomach. The bottom part is called the body of the stomach. From the outside, you can see that there's a greater curvature here. It's this outside edge of the stomach. It's called the greater curvature of the stomach. This part is called the lesser curvature of the stomach, this outside edge. So like the inside of the J shape that the stomach makes. Right after that curve, this last area of the stomach is called the pyloric region of the stomach. That's because it terminates or ends in this little pyloric sphincter here. Basically works as a valve. It's closed whenever the stomach still needs to be digesting food, and then it opens up to allow food to flow into the duodenum here. It's just a really short section of the small intestines. Other vertebrates would have a really long and convoluted duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, but sharks just have this really short duodenum section. Now on top of the duodenum, right here, you have part of the pancreas that's called the ventral lobe of the pancreas. The other part of the pancreas goes along the back side of the spleen here. So on the greater curvature of the stomach, this organ here is the spleen. On the back side of the spleen, you can see the dorsal lobe of the pancreas here. This little part right here that connects the dorsal lobe to the ventral lobe, this part is called the isthmus of the pancreas. Now in cats, this is called the tail of the pancreas, the isthmus of the pancreas, and the head of the pancreas. But in sharks, it's the dorsal lobe, the isthmus, and the ventral lobe of the pancreas. So don't get that confused. I know it's kind of silly, but let's try to avoid confusion. The mesentery between the spleen and the stomach is called the gastrosplenic ligament. It's called a ligament because it's more like short and robust. So this mesentery right here is the gastrosplenic ligament. Gastro just refers to the stomach here. Okay. Another important mesentery here is the lesser omentum. So this mesentery here that surrounds this complex of arteries and veins is called the lesser omentum. It's also known as the gastrohepatoduodenal ligament. The hepato part refers to the liver, hepato or hepatic. The gastro part refers to the stomach, and the duodenal part refers to the duodenum here. So the lesser omentum is just all one piece here, closer to the liver, but then at its lower ends, it splits into a sheet here that goes to the lesser curvature of the stomach. That part is called gastrohepatic ligament. Hold on just a second. Guys, can you all be a little bit quieter because it's hard to hear for the videos. Okay, so
Ask Mary to send me hers. I'm not going to hear anything on it.
So this part is called the gastrohepatic ligament, and this part is called hepatoduodenal. So it goes from the hepato part from the liver to the duodenum. So, oops, hepatoduodenal, gastrohepatic, both parts of the lesser omentum. Okay, the mesentery that attaches to the stomach and small intestines is called the greater omentum. So this big sheet is greater omentum. This little part here that splits into the two between the stomach and liver, those are comprise the lesser omentum. So lesser omentum here, greater omentum here. Alright, so picking back up where we left off over here in the digestive tract, we have the duodenum here, right? Then that goes into the valvular intestine. So this is the valvular intestine here. When we cut it open, it has this spiral valve, so it's kind of like a spiral slide, right? So the food goes around and around and around and around. That gives it a lot more surface area to absorb nutrients than if it was just from here to here, when the food just went from here to here. And it's got a lot more surface area. Okay? Now the mesentery attaching the valvular intestine right here is called the mesentery proper. You can actually see a line right here. That's where it attaches to the greater omentum from this side. So you have greater omentum, remember, attaching to the stomach. So you can see it on this side, or you can see it on this side. Then when we pull up the valvular intestine, you can see mesentery proper here. And then don't forget, this part and its two sheets are called lesser omentum. Okay? With the gastrohepatic portion and the hepatoduodenal portion. Now after the valvular intestine here, this lower part the lower portion right here is called the rectum. And then this space here that's used for waste and reproduction, that's called the cloaca. You really can't see it very well from that angle, but this little part here is called the urogenital papilla. It's urogenital because it's a male. We have the claspers here. In a female, it would just be called a urinary papilla because it just has a urinary function, whereas in the males, both sperm and urine would come out of it. Okay, now the space up here above the urogenital papilla is actually part of the, or is the anus. So you can stick your probe up here and see that it goes into the rectum here. So this part is the anus where food waste would come out, and the urogenital papilla would be where urinary waste comes out. Okay? Now the last little organ here is our rectal gland, right here. And then the mesentery attaching it is called the mesocolon. Right, which is kind of weird because it's not attached to the colon, right? The thing most similar to the colon would be the valvular intestine, but the mesocolon here is attached to the rectal gland. Okay? We'll finish up with the gill stuff. So if you open up the oral cavity here, you can see you have these gills 1 through 6. Each chamber between each gill is called a parabranchial chamber. These gills in the middle here that have gill lamellae, that's the pink things on both sides, has gill lamellae on both sides. These are called holobranch gills because each gill is whole, having them on both sides. On the first gill, like this one, so you can see it has gill-lamellae just on this one side, and of course there's nothing over here, but there's no chamber on that side. This is called a hemibrink gill. Similarly, the last one is the same way. The sixth one is a hemibrink, and then these 1, 2, 3, 4 are all holobrink gills. Okay, the chambers don't have any special names; they're all parabranchial chambers. Okay, you can see these little gill rakers here that help keep food in the mouth and prevent it from going into the parabranchial chamber. And then another thing they point out is you can see this little tissue here, the sheets of tissue that where the gill-lamellae is attached on either side. Those are called the interbranchial septa. Okay.
Can you print out the artery?
Huh?
That supplies.
Which artery? Oh, was it epibranchial artery? Afferent branchial? I have to look in the book.
Afferent, and you have the epibranchial. The
I'll
one,
have to look.
the one that's around the ceratobranchial is the afferent, I think.
Right, so these like,
Afferent branchial arteries.
can you show me in the book? Because I don't remember that. I mean, we do it during the circulatory system. I'm not going to ask you arteries in this section.
Okay.
Because we learned that and we look at it better in the circulatory system. So those are just right here.
Oh.
But, so that's just where they're cut, but they actually go like in a C here next to the ceratobranchial cartilage. That all of that's afferent branchial artery. So like this is all afferent branchial artery at the base of the gill-lamellae. Like I said, we'll ask you those questions in the circulatory system. All right.
Cool.